every AFL club's most important player. Not the best player, who is most pivotal to that team and their success if it comes. I'm going to be going through alphabetical order from Adelaide to West Coast and tell you who is the most important and why. Before we get into this, make sure you like, subscribe, comment down below your team's most important player, follow the TikTok FTFooty, and let's get right into this. Adelaide's most important player, simple for me, is Tex Walker. And now this isn't based on the future necessarily. Tex Walker in the now. I mean, Adelaide have been looking for a replacement for him for so long. You know, Fogarty's failed, Himmelberg's failed, so many key forwards have failed. Tex Walker, old, aging like fine wine, he's still carrying that team, nearly winning the Coleman. And we've seen how shit Adelaide are when he's not playing, the leadership he brings, the structure to their forward line, which ultimately is Adelaide's strong point, their attacking style of gameplay. He is their most important player. And look, once he departs Adelaide, they're in big trouble. They need to find a replacement, otherwise shit could hit the fan. For Brisbane, I don't think Brisbane necessarily have a very important player. You could have gone with Lachie Neale, you could have gone with other midfielders, you could have gone with Charlie Cameron. I've gone with Harris Andrews. Opposite to Tex Walker, Harris Andrews is young and is a captain now, so that is just important in itself. But he is absolutely vital towards what Brisbane will be wanting to do in the next couple of years, which is win that flag. I think they can afford to lose, you know, maybe a Neale or other midfielders. Even arguably, I would say he's more important than losing a Charlie Cameron. I feel like if Brisbane, and for any of these teams, if they lost this player, shit hits the fan. If Brisbane lose Andrews, their defense is fucked. Carlton, so many names for Carlton. I'm not just going to go key position players every time, because that's boring. I've gone with Sam Walsh. Couple reasons. When he's been injured, Carlton looks shit. When he's in that team, Carlton look phenomenal. He won the best finals player award, not even having played every game in the finals as well, which is just so impressive. Sam Walsh is a Brownlow shout. When he is fit, he's phenomenal. Look out for that man. I rate him so highly. And I honestly think if you had to choose any player to get injured, I feel like Carlton can cover Wiedering's loss, they can cover Curno's loss. They're in big trouble if Walsh gets injured. Leader as well, despite, you know, there's no title on his leadership. He's a leader in that team and he's so young. Their most important player for the future and for the now. Big game player, absolute star. For Collingwood, simple one, captain and defender like Harris Andrews, it's Darcy Moore. I think what he brings to that team, he keeps them solid at the back, solid as a team, mentality beast as well. The mentality of Collingwood is like no one else. And that ultimately comes down to many people, but importantly it comes down to Darcy Moore. And for that, he's their most important player. I feel like if Collingwood lost Darcy Moore, they wouldn't be too bad off without him. But if they lost any position on the field, I feel like they would be able to cover it pretty well because their list is just so deep in depth. Does that even make fucking sense? Anyway, he is definitely their most important player. Essendon. Many names come to mind. No one's screaming out at Essendon. I have gone with Zach Merritt. A little bit of a cop-out. The captain, the best player. But I think the thing with Merritt nowadays is he's versatile. He can move up forward and play a very key position in the forward line structure. You know, if Merritt's being tagged, chuck him up forward. He had a couple games in 2023 in the forward line where he only got 10 to 15 touches, but his influence was phenomenal. And for that, because he's just not a ball-winning midfielder who, you know, doesn't bring anything, he brings a lot more than a lot of other players, and I think he probably is their most important player. Peter Wright could be another good option, but I've just gone with Merritt. For Fremantle, it's really obvious. It's Brayshaw for the now, for the future. Fremantle have struggled to keep star players there because there's just no history, but Brayshaw looks like, and this is Andy, not Angus, Brayshaw looks like he is, you know, looking to stay there for his whole career. Darcy, there's been links for him leaving. Sarong's from Victoria, so I could see him leaving. Key position players, I think, are disposable in Fremantle. Despite Pierce being their captain, I don't think they struggle too much without him. Yes, Sarong's a better player than Brayshaw, but if one had to leave the team or would be injured for the whole season, it would rather it be Sarong than Brayshaw, because Brayshaw, the leadership he brings as well, two-way runner, he does the hard yards. It's not that, you know, just attacking midfielder who gets all the Brownlow votes. He does the hard, down and dirty work as well. And this is all opinion based. I do have my reasons behind it. Geelong's most important player, it was Joel Selwood, but not anymore. It is Tom Stewart. Simply because he has been a pillar of that defense for the last 6, 7, 8 years. One of the best defenders in the last decade. A leader down back, teams tag that guy to stop Geelong from winning in the defense. When do you hear a team tagging a defender? It's so rare. That just proves how good he is. And similar to Walsh with Carlton, when Tom Stewart is injured, Geelong look frail. They look leaky at the back. Leaky is a fucking broken pipe in a 100-year-old house. Leaky is Baz Smith on a night out on the Snapchat. They're leaky, alright? So I just think that's why he's important. For GWS, it's Toby Green. Easiest answer I will ever have to give. Their forwards are replaceable. Their defenders, maybe Sam Taylor isn't quite replaceable. But Toby Green, his versatility is important. Forward, midfield, his leadership is important. He's a big game player as well. And I feel like if I had to choose one player who drives the game style in that team, it's Toby Green. And obviously he's their best player, one of the best players in the competition. He is very injury prone, so it does beg the question, is he that important? Because he's always injured, surely GWS have sort of learnt to live without him, so he's no longer that important and he's not of such reliance, but I still think he is the most important player. Gold Coast, I've purely gone on a player who will stay at Gold Coast, sort of like Andy Brayshaw at Fremantle. You want a player, well, the most important player is someone who needs to stay there and who is going to stay there. There are so many names at Gold Coast who I think will leave. Ben King's going to leave, in my opinion. Lukosius is going to leave to Adelaide, in my opinion. All of these star players, these young players, despite Dimmer going to coach there, I still think they're going to leave. But the one man who won't leave is Tuke Miller, brilliant midfielder, close to the Brownlow in those seasons when he wasn't injured. In 2024, he should be fit and firing. Hopefully he gets his body right. Leader as well, captaining. What more do you want from that guy? He is a brilliant player, and if we've just seen Gold Coast, they finished 4th last without him, arguably one of the worst teams in the competition. He's their most important. For Hawthorn, it's Sicily, easy as you like. Captain, key defender, big game player. He is the heart and soul of that team, and for that reason, he is the most important player. And he is going to be so important in nurturing those younger players. Sicily was not old, but he's definitely not young anymore. So he's going to play a key role in sort of nurturing these young talents in Hawthorn. Hawthorn are abundant in young talent, and Sicily is going to be key to sort of drive them in the right direction in life and just football standards. No one else comes to mind when I think about Hawthorn, so I have gone with Sicily. For Melbourne, now for Melbourne's a really interesting one because there are sort of two sort of positions you can take on this. There's one position where I've gone with Angus Brayshaw, versatility, consistent player. Melbourne struggled to cover his position, which is a defensive winger or even a winger defender. You know, he rolls through the wings, but also comes back to defend. Very hard to replace him, and is also very key to their system. The other metric of this is looking at in the scope of Clayton Oliver and all the allegations. Clayton Oliver quite literally is the most important player at Melbourne right now because he is causing the most shit. He's fracturing relationships. He's fracturing and diminishing the fabric and the culture of that club. So if you look at it in that way, Oliver is the most important player because if he gets his shit right, Melbourne will be a great team. If he continues to go down this path of certain allegations, Melbourne will crumble. And for that, actually, I'm going to go with Clayton Oliver as Melbourne's most important player. And even on field, a leader on field, you know, very important to their system. One of their best players as well. I feel like it is him. For North Melbourne, this is sort of like the Gold Coast and Fremantle shout. Who's going to stay there? And I think LDU is going to stay there. I think LDU might be a future captain. He gives me shades of Bontempelli. Big, silky midfielder who has the ability to go forward, go back. Does he have those leadership qualities? We'll see in the future. But he's someone who will be staying there in the future. And for that, he's important because if he goes, it ruins them. But really, North Melbourne, their most important thing or person right now is Alistair Clarkson. But as a player, it's LDU. For Port Adelaide, there are many names you can go for Port Adelaide. Some defenders. Charlie Dixon was a name I heavily considered. I actually put him down there first. But instead, I've gone with Connor Rozee. I think he's a better player than Butters. Purely because Rozee can play through that midfield but provides that X factor up forward. And both those two young players and Horn Francis now as well, a lot of Port Adelaide are based around and built on those young players in the future. And out of those three, I think Rozee's the most important because of his versatility, because of the X factor he brings. And to me, in terms of the attributes, Connor Rozee can do what Butters can do, but Butters can't do what Connor Rozee can do, if that makes sense. Obviously, both are phenomenal players, but we're being strict on this. Richmond's most important player is Gibcus. The reason is Richmond are going to go into a rebuild, whether it's mini or big, it will be a rebuild nonetheless. less. And Gibcus is a young, promising, high draft pick defender who, in his first season, was phenomenal. In 2023, unfortunately, injuries fucked him. But if he gets his body right, he's going to be the pillar in our defense. He will be a future captain in my eyes. And if all goes to plan, based off what we saw in his first year, he is the future of Richmond, and he will be absolutely pivotal in that rebuild, trying to build Richmond back up to a successful club. I don't want to hear shouts of Dustin Martin, Shea Bolton. I think Gibcus is the most important. St Kilda's most important player, once again, no one's shouting out to me. Jack Steele, you could say, but Steele was injured for a lot of the last couple of years, and when he's injured, St Kilda performed just as good. Some of their forward line players, we've seen their forward line players get injured, and they can still cover for those players. And for that reason, I've gone with Callum Wilkie. Howard, Wilkie, take your pick. If one gets injured, big problems. St Kilda have traditionally struggled with those big forwards because they don't have the big body defenders. But Wilkie, what he's brought to St Kilda, all Australian shouts, or all Australian, I think he's more important to the team than Howard. Either way, those two are both far and away the most important players in the club. I think the influence on the club if Wilkie got injured would be far greater in a negative respect than if Howard did. 3 left, Sydney's most important player. I've got 2 names and I need to decide on one. I'll talk you through them. One is Tom McCartan. Rampy's getting old and injury prone. McCartan's brother has obviously retired. Tom McCartan is 23, a young, promising defender, and Sydney are in dire need of some fit key defenders. And he is just absolutely pivotal to them in the now and importantly in the future. He can't afford to get injured again in 2024 because really Sydney are relying on one of him or Rampy being fit. But because of his youth, I've gone with him being more important as Rampy. The other man I had was Callum Mills. As a leader, extremely important. As part of that leadership group, he's a captain. Out of the midfielders, I think he's the most important because of his two-way running, defensive and offensive attributes. He's not the star player with the fancy moves. He's the heart and soul player. But I think if it had to come down to it, who would Sydney rather not be injured? They would rather McCartan stay fit. And that's why Tom McCartan's the most important. The Dogs, Marcus Bontempelli, I don't care what name you put out there, best player in the competition, therefore most important player at the club, the captain of that club, big game player, leads the culture. What more do you want? That man is the most important player at the Dogs. And probably the most spicy one, West Coast, I've gone with Harley Reid. Quite antithetical to what I've previously said, which is choosing players based on, you know, the potential of them staying being high. Harley Reid, quite the opposite, is I've chosen him because, not because he is likely to leave. Look, I don't know if he's going to leave West Coast. Who fucking knows? But with the West Coast rebuild, he is now the most important player. He's like Jason Horne-Francis at North Melbourne when he was there. The Eagles are going to build the rebuild surrounding Harley Reid. Harley Reid's in the center and all the bits and pieces of that rebuild revolve around him because he needs to stay there. He's going to be a brilliant player. He's going to be a future captain, future All-Australian, maybe Brownlow medalist. So you have to build it around him. And I just think with West Coast, McGovern's had links of leaving, Barras had links of, there are so many players with links of going. And I think Harley Reid walks into that team as one of their best 5 players, which is astonishing to say. But that just emphasizes the shit that West Coast is in and also the importance of Harley Reid. But that is it. That is every club's most important player. Like I said, your club, let me know your most important player in the comments and why. Wherever gone wrong on this list, make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Follow the TikTok FTFooty, and I'll be seeing you in another video.